Hi there, I'm Han. This is just another video of me solving a numerical problem. So let's begin. So today we have a regular expression matching. So given an input string S and P pattern, determine the regular expression matching which support uh, the dot, right, and then the star, which is the asterisk. So the dot means we can match any single characters, and the star means we can match 0 or more of the preceding characters. So if we have a C star, right, and A, C, and A, E, and A, right? This will work, right? It is true because we can match a 0 or more C, right? Which is a 0 in this case, so A and A are the same. It's true. So the naive approach to this solution is to this problem is just to use recursion, right? So if we have let's say we have A star, B star, C star, right, as a pattern, and the string gonna be CBA, right? So what is our base case? Our base case is when S and P are empty, right? Right. So if S is empty, then P might not be empty, right? Because we can have A star, B star, or C star, right? With also match and empty string here, right? However, if P is empty, if the pattern is empty, if the pattern is empty, then S must be empty, right? If there's nothing in the pattern, then there cannot be any letter in F. So that would be our base case, right? And as we compare each characters, we can just keep us slicing them, right? Right, until both S and P are empty, right? So our base case is that if uh, P dot line equal to 0, the pattern is empty, then F must be empty. If both of them are empty, then we return true. If P is empty but S is not empty, then we return false. Okay, this is our first approach, recursion. Okay, so that is our base case. So how can we? So we can compare, right, letter by letter. We can compare the first letter before we slide, right? The first letter. So that is, we can call this the first match, right? The first match, this is only match if S of I, right, S of 0 is equal to P of 0, right? Or if P of 0 is a dot, right? Because the dot can match any sorry, the dot can match any character, right? So if it is a dot, right, then we can just set the first match is true. Okay, so that is our first match. First match equal to, so we need to make sure that S of line is greater than 0, right? Because if in the case where we have where P, right, is not empty, but S is empty, right? In this case, which means we're not gonna return, right? But if S is empty, right, which means uh the first match is gonna be always be false, right? We can make sure that S is inbound. So it is either that S of 0 or is equal to P of 0, the two letters are the same, or P of 0, right? Is equal to a dot. Okay, right? And we can return, right, the first match, right? We can check uh the first letter, and then we just keep going, right? By slicing S and P. We just slide by one. like that, right? So, right, after we compare the first letter, right, which is A, right, we can move on, we can fly the string, right, to get rid of the first character, and we can keep going, right, to comparing the remaining ca ca characters. So ABC, right, as P and right, like let's say dots, right, or ADC, right, right. So if the first character are not the same, right, here is D, then we can just return false, right? So that is our recursion method, like without the answer, without the star, right? However, with the star, we need to do something else, right? We need to check to because we need to match because the star can match zero or more of the preceding characters. If we have A star, right, B and C, right, then we can try to match zero occurrence or one or more, right? So if we match zero occurrence, which means the S stay the same, right? X is still A, B, C, right? And P gonna be B and C, right? Because if we match zero occurrence, right? Case one, match zero occurrence, then we get rid of A star, right? The only pattern left is B and C. Okay. So in other words, S stay the same, right? And P is like P the slide, next to we get rid of the first two characters. Okay. So that is the first case. Um, the second case is that we have one or more occurrence, right? So in this case, we need to make sure that the first letter is the same, right? And we can move on to the next characters here by slicing the S, but the P have to stay the same, right? I guess the P have to stay the same, right? Because we are matching one or more, right, occurrence. So we know that it is one because now we are comparing the first match, right, with A and A. They are equal, so that is one occurrence, right? But S might have more A, right, later on. We don't know yet. We don't know yet, right? So that is why we keep P the same so that we can match this again later on. Okay, so that is two case again. If we want to match zero occurrence, right, then S is gonna stay the same, right? Because we don't want to match anything. And then we get rid of A star, right? Which is the first two letters in P, right? If we want to match one or more occurrence, then we need to compare the first match, right? And then we slide S, right? We get rid of the first letter in S, but then we keep P the same, right? So we can keep getting the next occurrence of A. Okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if right, P dot length is greater than 2, because we have to make sure that it is inbound, right? And P of 1 is equal to a star, right? So P of 0 is the first letter, right? So we are guaranteed that if S exists, right, each appearance of the star, there will be a previous valid character to match, right? So we always compare P of 1. Okay, so if that is the case, if we want to match 0, right, occurrence, so 0 occurrence means we can do if match, right? S and then P the slide of 2. Right? So if it is zero occurrence, which means S stay the same, we don't want to match anything, and then we get rid of A star, right? So we can go to the next characters later on. Okay. Or we can match one or more occurrence, right? Which means we need to make sure the first letter match, right? Which is one occurrence. Then we need to call is match, keeping slicing S by one, and then keeping P the same, right? So zero occurrence, first one or more occurrence, we compare the first letter, and then we slide S and keep P the same, so we can get the more A later on, right? So let's try that. Okay, what's wrong here? Let's see. So if it is P dot line is greater than, oh, it's greater than or equal to 2, right? because we only need two letters for a star, right? Because because the star always come with a preceding letter, right? So greater than or equal to. Okay. Okay, it worked, but as you can see, it's very slow here. It's all the way like to the left here. It's not even in the bell curve. So we can try a different solution to this by using dynamic programming, right, DP. Okay, so because every time we slide a string, right, that is O n, right, that is like very expensive and recursion is slow in like nature. Um, if we use dynamic programming, we can get the runtime down to s multiplied by p, right, where s is the length of um the s string and p is the length of the p string, right? Because in the worst case, imagine like we need to go back and try like every combination, right? So like because we can pick like zero occurrence of A, one occurrence of A, two occurrence of A, so three, four, five, and we need to keep trying, right? So that is our worst case. So we can use a DB table. So let's say we have XA star B C, right? X, let's see, let me delete this. Okay, so X, right, A star dot B and C. Let's do B dot C. Uh, where's my eraser? Here. Okay, so B dot C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is our index 0 here. And then the other one is S, right, which is the string and the XAAPYC. XAAPYC. So uh, X, right, X, A, 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 E, Y, C. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is 0. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna have something like this. Excuse me for my drawing. This is the best I can do. Um, Wait, hold on. We need to keep the space for the 0. Right, I forgot to leave the space for the 0. Wait, let me just fix that real quick. 1 second. Right, all right. So this is our string. It is S. It is sorry, this is the pattern. This is a string. S. Right. S. This is P. Okay. And we are starting at index 1 instead of index 0 here, because if we have an empty string, right, and an empty pattern, right, 0 and 0, right, which means we can set it to true here. Right? Okay. So if we have an empty pattern, right, you have a pattern of 0, right? So if we ever have a length in the string, then it's always gonna be false, right? Always gonna be false, false, right? Um, in other words, we can set the default va value, right, as false for every tile. And then when we create a 2D array, we can just set the default value for every single tile as false. So, and we can just set true later on. So we know that the first column, right, always going to be false. Because if we don't have a pattern and there's if p dot length is equal to 0, remember, and s dot length is not 0, right, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, which means it's going to be um, false. Okay. And if we don't have a string, if the string dot length is if a string is 0, right, if the string is empty, the pattern uh might be the pattern like doesn't have to be empty, right? So for example, you can have a star, right? A star, right? This is also valid, right? So the thing is that here, okay. So because we don't have any letter in S, right? So the spot that gonna be true for this case, right? Gonna be the zero occurrence case, right? So let's say for example, right, I have true here, right? That's the first case. True is here. True is here as the first case. True, right? And then from here, right? It's gonna be a star, right? B star, and that's just gonna be empty, right? With nothing inside, right? So in this case, um, the star here gonna be true, right? It is false, right? Because we can match it with zero or more occurrence, right? So we can decide to match zero occurrence, right? So we can say, okay, we're gonna look at if it is a star, we're gonna look at two two column we're gonna turn back two column, right? And look at this letter, right? So if we have a star, right, and then S is empty, right? It is match. Yet it is, right? So here, let me do it again. So if we have so we are comparing between a star, right? Between an empty string, right? And then a star. Okay. So if we jump back two column, right? This is our pattern. This is our pattern. If we jump back two column, which means we get rid of these two, which means we are having zero occurrence, right? So the only thing that we have to compare is an empty string, right? And that is already true, right? This is PNS, right? So that's why this is true here. Okay. But in this case, in this case, um, in this case, it's gonna be false, right? Because we don't have a star B star, right? Like in the example. So if we look at here, look at the first row here, right? X, it is not a star, so it always will false. So this is an asterisk, right? So we're gonna look at uh the previous two column, right? We jump back to, right? And it is false, so we set it to false, right? Because if we get rid of a star, right? We're gonna have zero occurrence of a star. Then the pattern that we have to match is X, right? And we cannot match the X because S is empty on the first row, right? S is empty on the first row. Okay. So this is gonna be false, false, and false, right? All the way through. Okay. So how many cases do we have here? So let's just walk through it. So if we are comparing um here, right? If we are here, we are comparing S and X, right? And then remember that we need to need it a one index, right? We are using one index instead of zero index. So every time we compare, we need to minus one here, right? So if s I minus one our row, right, is equal to the p of j minus one, right? Which is x and x here. If they are equal to each other, we're gonna set it to true, right? Okay. If they are not equal to each other, right, then we're gonna check to see if p is equal to p at j minus one is equal to a dot, right? Because a dot can match any characters, right? So yeah, so this is a Boolean array, right? Where the row gonna be our p and the column gonna be our, so the column gonna be our pattern and the row gonna be our string. Okay. So again, if it is a dot, right? If p is a dot, it can match any characters, right? So it is valid, right? If they are not equal, we see if there's a dot, right? A dot is also a valid. Okay. So this is case one, right? So we keep going, right? Onto this tile. So A is different than X, right? A is different than X, right? And the pattern is not a dot, right? So we just set this to false and move on. Okay, so now we have X in the star. Okay, so now we reached a special case, right? X in the star. So at column 3, we can see that it is what we have. This is what we have. Let me change color. Here, this is what we have, right? So X, A, and star. It is our pattern, right? X. And then we're gonna have at row 1, we're gonna have X and we only have X. So we are comparing X and X A star, right? So because it is a star, remember we have two cases. The first case is zero occurrence. The second case is one or more occurrence. So if we take zero occurrence, right, we can look back. We can get rid of this and then only compare these two, right? So we can compare uh um we can just take the value, right, as S of I, right? Sorry, we will take the value at the DP, right, at I and then J minus 2, right? So I is on the same row, right? And J minus 2, it just we jump back 2 column, right? So we are here, right? We're gonna jump back 2 column, which is here, which is true. So we set it to true here, right? Because if we jump back 2 column, right? If we jump back 2 column, then the only data we have is X and X, right? So we are comparing X and X. And we already did that earlier, right? So we don't want to compute that again. We can just read the value from the DP table, right? If we have zero occurrence of A, right? If we have zero occurrence of A, which means we jump back 2 columns, right? We delete A star, we only have X left and X here. So we compare, right? And we already did that earlier, right? And that is true. So you can just set true in our result. True. Okay. So the first case, right? Is true here, right? The second case is when we see a star, an asterisk, right? Then we can look at the zero occurrence, right? If that is true, then we set the tile to true. We also have the one occurrence case, but more on that later. So let's keep going. So you have X and B, right? The difference of false, X and dot, right, are true because dot can match any uh, char any characters here, right? So oops. Okay, so and then X and C is false, right? And then now we compare A and X, right, which is false. pause here. Okay, so here we run into this case again, right? If S of P of I minus J and P minus J, right? Which is we're comparing this and this, right? A is equal to A. So if A is equal to A, right? Then how do we know that the previous string are also equal, right? We don't know yet. What if we have B, BA and CA, right? A and A are equal, but how do we know that B, the first letter match, right? So in that case, we need to look at the DP, right? DP of I minus one, right? And then J minus one, which is show here, right? So if we have, so we are here, right? So we have X and A, and then X and A, right? So we're gonna compare A and A, right? If A is equal to A, right? If S of I minus one and then P of J minus one are equal to each other, right? Or the pattern is a dot, right? And this way it is valid. So we have successfully compared the current letter. Cool. But we also need to take into account of the previous letters, right? And then how do we know if the previous letter are equal? We can just compare this, right? Which is I minus one, J minus one, the the title right here, right? We can just go back one row and one column and keep comparing, right? And because we already compute that, right? So we can just read the value from the table, right? At I minus one, J minus one. Okay. So again, if one of these two cases happen, right, then we're gonna read the value of dp I minus one, J minus one. Because if the current letter are equal, if the current letter of the string and the pattern match, right? And we want to compare the previous letter. And the previous letter we already compared. So we just read it from I minus one, J minus one from the DP table. Okay. Same for here when we compare X and X, remember? At this box, right? X are equal, right? And then we compare the previous letter, right, which is a 2NT string, right? 2NT string, which is shown here, right? Okay. So yeah, I think that is it for this case, for the regular case. Let's keep going here. Now we have A and star. Okay, so now we run into a special case here. Okay, so we have so we are here, right? And then here, right? So we have X, A star, X, A star, and then X A star and then X A, right? X A. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can use the regular, we can use the previous data we just talked about, like zero occurrence. So we check for zero occurrence of A, right? So we jump back to column, we get it of this, and we are comparing this, right? So we jump back to column, right? So this is false, right? Right? Why is it false? Because X is different than XA, right? It's not the same. Okay. So the zero occurrence case doesn't work. Doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So what do we have to do here? We have to compare. We need to look at the one or more case, right? So how can we do that? So the zero occurrence doesn't work. We have to try the one plus case. So we can look at the p of j minus two, and then sorry, we need to look at the dp of I minus one and j, right? We need to look at the one above. So, okay, first of all, before we even do that, we need to compare, right? So we are here, right? This is our j minus 1, right? We need to compare A and A, right? So it will be our j minus 2, right? This is our I minus 1, remember? I minus 1. So we compare it. We need to make sure that this letter is equal to this, this letter. So it is a one case. Oh, sorry, it is a zero occurrence. Right. It is our 1 plus occurrence. So we have to check if the p, right, at j minus 2, which is this letter here, is equal to s of I minus 1, right? They have to be equal to each other, right? Because uh so this is similar to our first match, if you recall, right? Need to check for the first match, right? So these two letters have to be equal to each other, which means that A will be in the sequence of A star, right? So if A is not equal to each other, then another thing we can check for is it is a dot, right? A dot of a star, which means it can be one or more, zero or more of any characters, right? So we can check if that is a dot or not, right? Or uh, P of j minus 2, right, is equal to a dot. Yeah. That is also valid. X A star and then X A, right? This can also be a dot, right? So we need to check for this condition, right? So we need to check if for the first match, right? So now we have 1 plus occurrence. We need to check for the first match. The first match means this two character, right? Which is P j minus 2, because this is our j minus 1. Why? Because we use a 1 index array, right? So this will be our j minus 1, right? So the previous is gonna be our j minus 2. This is our j minus 1, I minus 1, right? If the letter are equal or the letter are dot, right? Which means we are in a good shape. We can continue to check the previous occurrence, right? Right. So this is our first occurrence, right? If A is equal to A, or the pattern is equal to a dot, right? Which means, remember, we can do S dot slide. If you remember, we have to do S dot slide by 1, right, and keep P the same, right? So we slide X by 1 and keep P the same, right? Which is like this, right? We slide the S, right, by 1 and keep P the same, right? So we have to check this. We have to check uh so similar to this case, right? We need to we compare the current letter if they are valid, right? Then we need to check for the previous case, right? The previous letter and make sure they are valid, right? In that case, which means we can check for the case where X is our string and X A star is our pattern, right? So in this case, we need to go back one row, right? So we need to look at dp of I minus 1 and then j, right? So we are here, right? We need to go back one row to look at it, right? Which is true. So we return true here, right? Because this is true, right? And A is equal to A, remember the first match, right? So we set true here. So, okay, one more time. So if you refer to the recursion, right? This will be our first match. Right? So either letter, they have to be the same, or the pattern has to be a dot, right? That is the first condition for the first match, right? The first match right here, if you see it, it is the first match, right? Okay, if they match, right, then we need to fly S by 1. Remember, get rid of the letter in S and then keep P the same to keep comparing the previous pattern, right? Which we already did previously, right? We already did here, right? X A star and X, right? See, at, if you look at this spot, right, we already do that, right? X A star and right? So you can just read it from the DP table. Okay, so that is the two conditions that we need to 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 check for the 1 plus occurrence, right? 1 plus occurrence. And yeah, we can keep going, right? So A and B are different. So this is false. A, so pattern is a dot, so this is true. A and C is a false, right? And we can build out our table like this, right? It is false. A and A is true. Oh, sorry. It is false, right? Oops, am I going too fast here? So where were we earlier? So yes, so A and B are different, so this is false, but this is going to be false too, right? Even though A and the dot are the same, right? So A and the dot are different, but P of J minus one, which is the dot, right? A dot can match any cat characters, which is cool. But then we need to check for the previous. So the current letter is valid, but we need to check for the previous letter, right? So if you look at here, we have A X A right star B and dot, and in the column we're gonna have X and A, right? But even though X and dot can be valid, right? But if we get rid of that, the previous pattern are not valid, right? Because we don't have B. Because you need to look at I minus one, J minus one, right? Which is this one right here, right? So A and X are different, A and A are the same, right? So we need to check the previous pattern, right? So now what do we have? We have X A A, right? And then X A star, right? Sorry, XA and XAA, right? So A and A are the same, right? So we get rid of this. We look at the previous pattern. Look at A minus one, K minus one, which is this one right here, right? Which is not valid. XA is different than X, so this is also false here, right? So on and so forth. I'm not gonna do the whole thing here, but at the end, when you build out the whole thing, you can return the last tile, which is our result. Okay. So let's code this up. Okay, so let's see. We need to return DP, right? Flan and then Plan at the end. Okay, what is our Slan here? Gonna be S dot line. Plan gonna be P dot line, right? And we need to create our DPA array. The array from with a line of because we start from index one, right? So we need to go to S line plus one. Okay, so this is our row. So now need our column, right? The length gonna be P length plus one because we are using one index because we need our zero index, right, for the special case, right, when S and P are both empty and it is always true, right? And then we need to keep everything a default values of false. And the next step, we need to set dp of 0 and 0 is true, right? An empty an empty array, sorry, an empty string and an empty pattern is always true, right? The first column is already false, right? Because we set everything to false here. So we're just iterating through and then rewrite them. So before we even do that, we need to set our first row, remember? So on the first row, the string is empty, but the pattern might not be empty, right? And this might also be valid if we have A star or P star, if you recall. So we have to iterate up until the equal to the P length here, right? Because our length is P length plus one, right? P length and then J plus plus, right? So if P of J minus one, right, is equal to the star. So why J minus one? J minus one because we are reading from the P, right, which is the input, right? And then we are using a one index, right? So we need to look at if we want to read letter by letter in the pattern, we need to minus one, right? Because we are using the one index. Okay, so if it is a star, then we're gonna go back to column. So DP at 0, which is the first row, right? We are trying to sitting the first row here. at j, right? Because yeah, at j is equal to dp of 0, and then j minus 2. Okay, so here, because again, because the what is it? Because the string, right, the s is empty, right? And we are on because we are on the first row, so the s is empty. So so for the star case, the only case we have for the star case is only the 0 occurrence, right? We don't have the 1 occurrence case. So that's why we only jump back 2 column here, right? Assuming we don't have any occurrence on that letter. Why? We only have the 0 occurrence case because we know that S is empty, right? So P shouldn't have anything, right? So because like S is empty on the first row, right? First row, right? So P, if it is like a star, right? We are at here, right? J, uh, right, right. So if we have B here, right? So it is our J, right? So J minus 1 is star, right? If J minus 1 is the asterisk, then the value at this row, right, gonna be equal to row 0, right, which is the first row here, and then go back to 2 column, right, which is also false because a and an empty string is false, right? False. Okay. Okay. So after that, we can start to view out our DB table. So we net I less than or equal to S len, right? Again, because of the one index thing. So this becomes J, right? It's P len. Okay, so our first case is what? So if S of I minus 1 is equal to, because one index, right? So minus 1. P J minus 1 is R, right? If the letters are equal to each other, or P at J minus 1 is equal to a dot, right? We can set the dp at I and J, right, equal to the dp at I minus 1, J minus 1. Okay, because the current letter is valid, right? So we need to also check for the previous letter, right? Which we already did, right? So in the first case, we did as 1 and 1, right? And 1 minus 1 is 0, right? So we look at 0 and 0. So our base case here, right, was already give us, we already said it's true here. Okay. L if the P at J minus 1, right, is equal to the star. Okay. So if P is not equal to S, and then P is not a dot, so we need to check if P is a star, right? If P is a star, then you can set. Yeah, okay, so we need to, so this is our special case, right? We need to check for 2 cases, the 0 occurrence, right? The 0 occurrence mean we just had to go back 2 columns, right? And check the previous result, right? Assuming the letter doesn't exist, right? 0 occurrence. So we go back to column, right? Because star, we always come with preceding characters, right? So with that, we need to go back to column here, right? So otherwise, we need to go back 1 row, right? And check for the previous um, occurrence, right? So remember, we need to check, right? If P of J minus 2 is equal to a dot, right? Or P of J minus 2 is equal to S of I minus 1, right? Right. So this is our first thing well, we did earlier, remember? We need to, so if it is a 1 plus occurrence, we need to check for the first match, right? The first match is solid when the previous character is a dot, right? because our current character P minus 1 here, right, is a star. So we need to go back to check P minus J minus 2 here. So if that is a dot, it can match any characters, which is valid, no problem there. Or if it is not a dot, then it has to equal to the current letter in S, right? Okay, if they are valid, right, then which means the first match is correct, right? The first match is correct. In that case, we need to slide S by 1 and then keep P the same and keep checking, right? So we so what do? We go back, right, to I minus 1 to the previous row, right? Right, because we go back to the previous row to get rid of the letter in S, right? And then J is P, right? We just keep P the same because our pattern is on the column, right? On the column, so we keep the column the same. And I explained earlier. So yeah, just to recap, right? We view out our DP table here. Yeah, at 1 index, of course, and keep setting everything to false at default, right? We set our first tile or square to 0. Sorry, to true, 0 0, because 0, an empty string and an empty pattern was always true, and then we return it at the end, right? So it will be our hash table. And before we start, we need to build out our first row, right? The first column is always false because if the pattern is empty, the string has to be empty, right? So the first column is always false, and the first row might not be might not always be false, right? Because we can have an empty string, but a star, right, B star pattern, right? So we need to iterate through it and keep sitting to our first row, right? And because S is empty on the first row, and we know that we only have one choice, right? One special case for the asterisk, which is the um, zero occurrence, right? Because if P have any occurrence, that doesn't make sense, right? Because we only have an empty string in S, right? So if we see an asterisk, right, then we just go back to column here on the first row, of course, and set it equal to whatever of the value on the first row on the previous two column, right? Okay, and then and then after we sit the data of the DP table, we can go through each row and column, right? We give it a time complexity of O n square or OS multiplied by P, right? To build out our DP table here, right? The first case is if the letter is valid, right? The letter is valid, which means they are equal, or P is a dot, right? In that case, we're just gonna look at the previous pattern, see if it's matched, right? Because it is DP, dynamic programming, we're trying to take advantage of what we already built earlier. So we just go back one row and one column. So in the similar to the recursion, that is the normal case here, right? If the letter is correct, right? The first match is right. If we got the first match, right? Then we can keep slicing F and P here, right? To keep checking. Okay. And then if they are not equal, right? If we're gonna check if it is P pattern is a star. If it is a star, then we have two cases, right? Zero occurrence or one plus occurrence. So zero occurrence is pretty simple. Right? We just go back to column, assuming. So when we go back to column, which means we get rid of the pattern A and star, right? Remember? So we just assuming that doesn't exist and check the previous pattern, right? That we already built, if that's valid. If that is also not valid, then we're gonna check the one pattern, the one plus pattern, right? And for the one plus pattern, remember, we need to first to check if the letter of the pattern of the star pattern is equal, right? So we need to make sure that either the pattern is a dot, right? The dot star, or the pattern had to equal to the current letter in the string, right? And then not only that, we also need to check. So if we already confirm that, okay, the current letter in S is valid, then we need to keep checking for the previous pattern where we have already built, right? So we can go back one row, right? We keep P the same, but we slide S. We keep J the same to keep P the same, but we slide S by one by going back one row. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this problem. Let's give it a try. And it worked. So as you can see, the runtime is much better than the previous recursion solution here. So thank you for watching.